Oh God, I'm spotlighted. I'm glad I put lipstick on. Hi, everybody. We're going to get started. Welcome to Sax Genre Series. And tonight we're featuring historical characters, which will be, as I was just saying, really interesting and educational. And we have a couple of people I already know, and lots of people I don't know. So this is going to be quite fun for me to get to know you and listen to your stories. I think we're ready to go ahead and start with Rupa. Number one teller is Rupa Mohan. She's from the Asian American Storytellers in Action, and she's doing a betrayal of, tell me how I pronounce this, Sanghamitra, Sanghamitra, historical character from India who became a Buddhist nun. And she's one of our popular storytellers here in the Bay Area. She lives in Alamo. She volunteers at the Asian Art Museum. She tells folk tales and myths to school groups. She's so brave to work with children. It scares the bejesus out of me. She has experienced often braiding her childhood memories from South India. So right now we'll let her get started portraying a historical character. And setting the stage, the year is 250 BCE. And the oldest daughter of the mighty Indian emperor Ashoka is sailing on the ship to Sri Lanka to pursue a new life. And here is her story that she shares with her shipmates.
Namaste. My name is Sanghamitra, but I will forget that name very soon because I will take on a new identity. I am the daughter of the mighty King Ashoka. And he was reluctant to let me go on this voyage. He said it would be dangerous. But I convinced him and I told him that I would go for the good of the people and this new religion, the religion of the Buddha. I am on the ship now, heading to the island of Lanka. But for the last time, I will look back at my country, my father's kingdom, the Mauryan Empire. And I will tell you about my childhood and what made me get to this. I grew up in the beautiful city of Pataliputra. My mother, her name is Devi, is the first wife and the first love of my father. And I have an older brother called Mahindra. We had a happy childhood, though we had to live away from the palace because my mother did not have royal blood. She was very pious and she had already accepted this new religion and the teachings of the Buddha. Everybody said that my father was very cruel and he had even killed his own stepbrothers in order to get onto the throne. But I did not believe them. To me, my father was very brave and strong, and I loved him very much. I remember that day when I was about 18 years old and I was ready to become a Buddhist nun, though I was married and had a little son. I remember that day lining up on the streets of Pataliputra along with hundreds and thousands of people because my father was going on an expedition. Yes, he, with his army and infantry and cavalry, he was marching and going out of the gates of Pataliputra out to conquer a new land. the kingdom of Kalinga that he wanted to add to his empire. This was a beautiful kingdom on the east coast of India. And as he went, there were drummers and singers all bidding him a farewell and wishing him good luck. His young wives came and they drew the mark with vermilion on his forehead, wishing him luck and blessings. But my mother stayed away in our house, praying for him. And for a moment, my eyes and my father's eyes met, and he nodded as if to assure me that he was going to win this war as well. We all went back home and we prayed for the success. Well, a few months later, we started hearing good news that my father's army had advanced into Kalinga, and one by one, they had captured the villages and the towns, and they had expanded their territory. And soon a messenger came on horseback saying that they had won and Kalinga was going to be added to the Mauryan Empire. Now we all got ready to welcome them back. We again lined the streets of Pataliputra. This time it was even grander. And we were going to celebrate and have a big feast at the end of the day to mark this victory. Well, my father came in his golden chariot, drawn by the finest of horses, and he stood there. But wait a minute, as I looked, I noticed that his crown lay on the floor of the chariot. His head was in his hands like this. And as he entered, he said, "Stop, stop. I don't want all this rejoicing." And everybody became quiet. What was wrong? I wondered, was my father injured? Was he beaten? I could not understand this. But a few days later, the mystery was resolved. My father visited our house outside the palace, and he explained to my mother. He told her that he had gone in filled with ambition and aggression, wanting to conquer this jewel, Kalinga. And they were making great progress, razing villages to the ground, capturing people, getting all the wealth from the treasuries. And the final battle was on this river called Daya, which means compassion. Well, the Kalinga army put up a very fierce resistance. Yes, they were not going to give up easily. So there was a big battle on the shores of this river. But of course, my father's army was much stronger and they won. But at what price? My father said that he went up on a mound and he looked down. And he saw hundreds and thousands of corpses lying there. The river, the beautiful river, was bloody now. And the vultures swooped down to feast on the carcasses of animals and the corpses of humans. There were losses on both sides, and the relatives of the Kalinga, the fallen Kalinga soldiers came and they wept and they wailed. And my father said that he could not take it. He had to close his eyes and he was filled with guilt for all this destruction that he had caused. And that is why he came back not as a victor, but filled with remorse and regret. He confessed this to my mother, my gentle mother, who soon brought him peace. She had him meet the Buddhist monks who came and who pacified him, and they taught him the words of the Buddha and the precepts of this new religion that had just come about 200 years before this. And soon my father was a transformed man. He took the help of my entire family, and we all planned. We decided to build stupas or reliquaries, temples for the Buddhists. We decided to erect columns, edicts, sculpting all the messages of this new religion and the story of my father's transformation. And all over his kingdom, he ordered these things to be built. And not only that, he wanted to spread this new religion of love and peace and non-violence. Yes, he sent emissaries to other neighboring countries and territories. My brother, my husband, and even my small son became Buddhist monks. And I was by my father's side, but he soon asked me to join him. And I did. And then we got a call from this island of Lanka. The king wanted nuns to come and teach the women in the royal palace and to spread this new religion. So here I am, a nun having given up everything. I take with me a sapling of the Bodhi tree, the tree under which the Buddha got his enlightenment. And of course, I have the book, the Dharma, with all the precepts of Buddhism. Buddham Saranam Gacchami, Dharmam Saranam Gacchami, Sangam Saranam Gacchami. I bow down to you, Buddha. Namaste.
That was great. She's Rupa comes out to the Rossmore Storyteller sometimes, and shares her stories. They love her. And I'm a member of the India Club here in Rossmore, and so I invite all of my friends in that club. So she's very popular here. I appreciate it. Well, next we're going to have John Petrick. Oh, I see you're a great looking fine. You are looking fine in your hat and your uniform. John is somebody who is new to me, but I'm pretty excited to hear about his story. He's depicting General William Tecumseth Sherman. Sorry, I didn't get that. And General Sherman, of course, we know of all of his victories, but we're going to hear about his younger days when he was posted in California from about 1847 to 1850. And I really liked your little biography, John. It was cute. His introduction to performing was in first grade at a Christmas pageant. And 50 years later, after he retired and moved to Davis, he started again in writing stories and telling stories since 2020. Sometimes his wife accompanies him, and we welcome you, and go ahead, John.
I am William Tecumseh Sherman, General in Chief, United States Army. I'm happy to be in Sacramento. Many of you came here today to hear stories of the War of Rebellion, some call the Civil War. Our Army of the West divided the rebels in three. We seized Vicksburg, Jackson, Atlanta. We marched to the sea, marched north through the Carolinas to isolate General Lee between our army and General Grant. I love to tell the stories of my fine men of the Army of the West, the greatest fighting force there is. And if there are any of you out there today, I salute you. But today, my return to California has prompted a different story. Of 34 years ago, as a 26-year-old lieutenant, I came to California in 1847. Our ship left New York in July of 46 to come to California to fight the Mexican War. Our ship went around the tip of South America, and because of horrible weather, it took 190 days. We arrived in January of 47, and the fighting was over. Kearney had occupied Los Angeles. I could not have been more disappointed. Since I entered West Point at 16, I had trained, I had yearned to prove my bravery and skills in battle. Many of my classmates got that opportunity. There is usually one war per generation, and my war had passed me by. But a soldier must do his duty, and an officer must know the terrain to defend it, to track his enemy. And California was a vast, uncharted territory. There were perhaps 20,000 Californios on a few ranches. There were no cities. In fact, General Kearney had to send to Hawaii for provisions and clothing. And so I explored, I took notes, I mapped. I was based out of Monterey, the capital. I traveled to Los Angeles, and I marched 40 soldiers back through dry and dusty, tough country. I would not have traded that entire area for one of my green counties in my native Ohio. And going north was no better. The settlements were bleak. San Jose, a string of low adobe huts festooned with garlic and peppers. Santa Clara, a dilapidated church surrounded by dry orchards. The worst was Yerba Buena, a more desolate place I cannot imagine. Hurricane winds, the drift sand was so deep that our horses could hardly put one foot in front of the other. There was about a couple hundred people, a small harbor. There was a harbor master named Folsom who tried to sell me lots in that godforsaken place. He was buying as many as he could. I was insulted that he would think me as such a fool. But of course, we know Yerba Buena became San Francisco, and within a few years, it was 30,000 people, and Folsom was one of the wealthiest. So who was the fool? But I still cannot understand how the leading city of the Pacific ended up in such a horrible location. My choice would have been Benicia. In the spring of 48, two Americans arrived with a letter from a fellow named John Sutter. And Sutter had found gold along the American River where he was building a sawmill. And he was requesting that we grant him a section of land to keep out squatters. Well, we had no authority to do that. And we laughed because this was like 40 miles from the nearest settlement. What were the chances that anyone would bother him? But within weeks, the cry of gold was everywhere. I was dispatched to check it out. I traveled first through San Francisco, and the town was deserted. Everyone had gone to the hills. I went from Sutter's Fort up the American River, and There were miners everywhere. The lucky ones were making $1,000 a day. Sometimes they could just get a nugget directly out of the water. Even the less lucky ones were making $20 to $30 a day when the wage was $1. Well, I returned to Monterey and I said that we should write a letter to the president to tell him about this vast California gold deposit. And that letter was dispatched with an officer going east on leave. And in December of 48, President Polk announced the discovery of gold in California, which led to the California gold rush, all as a result of my letter. Well, soon thousands of people were arriving by boat in San Francisco, and they would immediately leave for the gold fields, including the crew. By 1850, there were 600 ships abandoned in San Francisco harbor because they had no crews. And our army had the same problem. Our enlisted men made $7 a month. A new regiment arrived in June 49 and half immediately deserted. We officers had to track them down. I knew the terrain and I first found their camp. I surprised them in the dark and arrested 22 of them and held them for hours till help arrived. Only one of those son of a guns got away. Well, this influx of people caused tremendous prices. A horse that would have been $10 to $15 was now $75 to $100. Our salaries did not keep up, and our commander said we could make money where we could. Well, there were thousands of people coming in and settlements everywhere, and most of them thought they were going to be the next New York City, and they needed platting and surveying, and that is a skill I had. And so we surveyed up and down the American River. We surveyed Sacramento. There's even a little settlement called New York of the Pacific that we surveyed. And I made $6,000 in 3 months. But of course, many of those settlements failed, including New York. But the one that survived and strived was that I could not understand was Sacramento. Again, a horrible location, prone to flooding every year. Well, people did not only arrive by boat, but they were coming overland and over the Sierras by the thousands. And as winter came close in 49, the people arriving said that there were still thousands of people behind them, many with dying oxen and low provisions. So my general bought $100,000 worth of food and provisions, and we ordered packed trains of soldiers into the mountains to assist these immigrants and to escort them through. And they stayed up there till the last immigrants were through. And by doing this, we probably saved hundreds, if not thousands, of lives from the Sierra winter. Well, that was California back then. And I can't say that I didn't regret when I rotated duty out to find a little more order. But I did return to San Francisco for 5 years in the 50s, this time as a civilian. But I always knew that I was a soldier. And when the War of Rebellion arrived, I had the opportunity to prove that to myself and to others. Thank you all for coming tonight. And to my fine men of the Army of the West, dismissed.
Oh, my God, that's great. Hey, John, I didn't know you before, but you have totally impressed me. We're going to have to get you down here in Rossmore to tell some stories. Thank you so much. That was fun. That was really fun. Things I didn't know. Okay, well, let's see. Let's move on, and thank you for following the timer. Mindy Donner is our next teller. She will be, oh, I love her hat. I love your hat, Mindy. Yes, show us. um, the Lindsay Woolsey Sisters is the title of the story, and it's the perspective of Patty Reed, who at this stage of life is now an elder, and she tells her story of being in the Donner Party. Now, is there any connection? I don't know. I don't know. Crossing the plains of Midwest California in 1847 with your family. And I like this line, an irreverent and heartfelt look at the life and the times of pioneer girls. Go ahead. Thank you so much.
Welcome. I'm Patty Reed. I'm one half of the Lindsay Woolsey sisters. The other half is my elder sister, Virginia. We're also known as covered wagon women, albeit we were little women. I can still hear my mother's dulcet tones. Now, girls, maybe these Lindsay Woolsey dresses don't look like much. They didn't. But they will keep you warm in the winter and cool in the summer, and you'll always be presentable as young ladies. I hated my dress, and it was scratchy and itchy, both wool and linen right around here, no matter what the weather was. Yes, we wore those Lindsay Woolsey dresses through our entrapment for 6 months, nearly, in the Sierra Nevada mountains with the Donner Party. Now, my sister, Virginia, was turning 13 on the trip, and I wasn't 9 until the end, and I wanted to do everything Virginia did. She rode her pony Billy like the wind with the men and Papa. Mama didn't even try to interfere with that, for Virginia was just as headstrong as our Papa. Our granny, our Granny Keys, came with us at the first part of the trip. She was a pioneer in her own right. She had come out from back east all the way to Ohio when Ohio was the Wild West. Now, Granny had stories. She would regale us with these stories, and we'd say, "Oh, please tell us the one about Cousin Lizzie. Yes, please tell us that one." And it was Cousin Lizzie went into the forbidden and dark woods. And she didn't come out again for 5 whole years. She wasn't seen or heard from until she stepped back into civilization. It was said she had been abducted by Indians. Our little brothers couldn't wait to be abducted by Indians. I know you do want to hear about the Indians we met on our trip. The grandest folk were the Sioux. They appeared to us like large, fierce, feathered birds with the white feathered ceremonial headdresses that came all the way down. And the women with their silken dark hair. Now, Granny Keys had a hacking cough. And as the chill rain set in, it became worse. We listened in the morning and we listened in the evening. And one morning there was silence. We buried our granny along a stream under willow trees in a sacred grove. It seemed that Granny's passing was the harbinger of rough times to come. Why, we took that Hastings cutoff and we went clear down where no wagon had ever passed and ended up in the Great Salt Desert, double the 40 miles that were promised. It was a vacant, parched, waterless crust of land. And we had to bury or cache our 2 out of 3 wagons, and most other folks had to also. And we lost a lot of our oxen. After that, moods were in a razor sharp way. And on one sandy hill, one day, our friend John Snyder, who was Papa's friend and the fiddler on the trip, why, he was driving some oxen and they became tangled up in the reins with our oxen somehow, and our driver, our Milt, started to yell, and John, who was usually calm, lost his temper, and Mama ran in and got hit with a whip. Papa ran in, and in the flash of a knife, John Snyder was lying on the ground, still. Papa didn't get hung. He was banished from the party, and he went on by himself, some of the way on foot to California. And after then, times were tough. And you all know that the most inclement winter set in early in the Sierra Nevada mountains. And we were trapped there for nearly 6 months. Provisions were very low. Our whole family survived, and each member showed their resolve to live in their true character. Now, when Papa had heard of this, he had already fought in the 1847 Mexican-American War, and he had a land grant. He was up at Sutter's Fort when he heard of our dire condition. And he came on a number of rescues. The first rescue, Virginia went with Mama and our brother Jimmy. But Tommy and I were too small to walk the drifts by ourselves. We waited. Papa came, and he and another tracker put both Tommy and then myself on their backs and took us up the Sierra Nevada and down to California. I have 3 memoirs or mementos of our trip. I have my dolly. She fit right in my blouse where I carried her. I told her all my secrets. And I have a lock of Granny's gray hair. I keep it close to me still. And I have this little salt cellar that came back from our table in Illinois. It holds a few grains of salt from there and a few grains of salt from the Great Salt Desert in Utah, and some salt from the Pacific Ocean, the playa, near our new home. Oh, I wish Granny could have come to California with us and seen our fruit orchards and tasted of this fruit and felt the cool Pacific Ocean lapping up on our feet and tickling our toes. Well, Virginia swore if she survived that she would convert to Catholicism because she stayed with the Greens, who were devout Catholics, up in the snow. And she has. And Virginia has become the first woman commissioner, fire commissioner in the West. and I run the Santa Cruz Hotel. And I must go now. I meet the trains with small parcels of food for the visitors and hand out brochures. And then I have the night shift at the desk at the hotel. Thank you for coming.
Am I on? Unmute. Unmute your microphone. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mindy. Wow, that was amazing. That was great. That was a little bit fun, but a little scary because we know how horrible it was for many people. Um, our next teller is Heba Hamden, and I did want to take a moment and ask about the timer. I don't see the timer.
I have my own timer, so no worries.
Well, no, I mean,
Claire, I don't know, for some reason it wasn't showing on the screen. I'm gonna try again with Hiba.
okay, but let's not hold the show up for Heba because she knows what she's doing.
Thank you.
All right, well,
But always.
you want to go ahead and get started and unpin me, or I'll unpin me. Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
You may have heard of the Iliad and Odyssey epics written by Homer, the Greek poet. But have you heard of the Epic of Gilgamesh? I first heard about it, I was 20 years old and was still in Lebanon at the time studying engineering, but I took few courses in archaeology just as a hobby. And there we learned Gilgamesh as one of the topics in archaeology at the Lebanese University. It blew my mind away. Did you know that the Epic of Gilgamesh is the oldest written story in the world? It was written around 2100 BC, so more than 4,000 years ago, which was 1,500 years before Homer wrote the Iliad and Odyssey. I was fascinated not only by its old history, but also its timeless message. So, what's this about? Where was it discovered? The Epic of Gilgamesh was found in the area that's now Iraq. That 5,000 years ago, in fact, to be accurate, 5,400 BC, which is 7,000 years ago, was the Mesopotamia area. Over there, the world had the first civilizations. That's the big cities. The first city in the world is there between Euphrates and Tigris in the south of that area, which is Iraq now. And it's 5,000 BC, occupied by the Sumerians at that time. The Sumerians were the first civilization that is discovered in the whole world. 3000 BC came in the Assyrians. At the same time, also the Egyptian civilization, the pharaohs. And 2000 BC, it was the Babylonians, all in that area. And they made so many discoveries other than the big cities, kind of state cities that they built then, in that old time. They invented so many scientific rules and marketing, and even the irrigation system, the first irrigation system was discovered there. The first writing system ever is called the cuneiform writing. And cuneiform means like a wedge shape. They used to use, wedges to write these on bricks. The Sumerians discovered the base 60, which we use now. It's for 60 seconds, 1 minute, and 60 minutes is 1 hour. It was discovered 5,000 years ago in Iraq. The Epic of Gilgamesh was found on 11 pieces of bricks, of course, spread all over, found by archaeologists. And they were able to decipher this cuneiform writing. And what's amazing is the Sumerians also had hierarchy in their ruling. By the way, they never used slavery. Never, like the Phoenicians in Lebanon. They didn't have slavery like the Romans or Greeks or even the Egyptians. Other than the cuneiform writing, also they used systems to document the trade that they made in these cities. So it was just the top city system by its ruler and what is going on there. Now, who discovered those 11 bricks written in a cuneiform form? It was an Iraqi called Hormuzd Rassam. He discovered those 11 bricks that he didn't know were an epic then in 1852. Now, in Wikipedia or online, if you check, you may find the names of Austin Henry Layard. He was the one who hired Rassam. But when those bricks were discovered, Sir Layard was already doing his political career. He was a diplomat. He left Iraq. It was Rassam who discovered them. And even someone else tried to take the credit for the discovery. It was Sir Henry Rawlinson, who said, well, Rassam is just a digger. It's like if we're talking about Apollo 11, if it really happened, we say, the first man to set foot on moon is President Richard Nixon. Neil Armstrong is just a walker. He said, Rassam is a digger, which is not true. He was the real one who discovered these that were found later to be an epic, a poem, and was translated. The other not so correct information is that George Smith translated these bricks, but in fact, long before him, hundreds of years before him, they were translated into Phoenician or Aramaic or the previous languages in that area there. Now, what's the epic is about, the story? It tells about Gilgamesh, the ruler, or if we want to call him the king, who ruled over the city-state, or Uruk. And then the Sumerian culture was that the king should be like a shepherd for his people. He needs to guide them, protect them, and rule them with the right hand fairly. But Gilgamesh did all wrong. He tyrannized the city of Uruk. So the people complained to the gods. And the gods decided to create his counterpart who has exactly same superhuman powers to be able to stand up and just put reason back into Gilgamesh. You see here in the picture, he's all, glory and beauty. He tamed, even lions. So Enkidu was brought up in the wild by the animals, but brought to civilization by a shepherd. And then they became there. He fought Gilgamesh, but Gilgamesh won. Enkidu, the name of that wild man, acknowledged the supremacy of Gilgamesh. And they went on an expedition to the cedar of forest, where they confronted and killed the guardian of the forest, Humbaba, who was assigned by the gods to guard the cedar forest. Then went back to Uruk, and there Ishtar, the goddess of love, proposed to Gilgamesh, but he rejected her, even insulted her. So she sent the bull of heaven, and they just killed him. Then they want to celebrate their victory, but Enkidu went to be sick, and he finally died. That was decided by the gods because he didn't help Gilgamesh be a good ruler to his city. So Gilgamesh started to feel his own destiny, and it brought home his own mortality. And he went over to the end of the earth to seek the secret for immortality. And he met with Utanapishti, the immortal, but couldn't get the secret, couldn't get to find immortality, went back. But Utanapishti offered him a plant that gives rejuvenation. Unfortunately, he lost it on his way back. He wanted to try it with an elderly person
We need to
before he
wrap up.
tested. And he lost that plant. So when he got outside of Uruk with the boatman who brought him to Utanapishti, he told him, look at the walls of the city that we built. We need to make more so that we can serve my people and make it a better city and a happier community. And this was the lesson that Gilgamesh learned, and this is the message of that epic.
Let's see, am I on? Okay. Thank you, Heba. Now, I forgot to mention that Heba has been a speaking coach since 2011. Now, are you from Southern California? It looks like you might be from your phone number. Heba?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, Claire. I am based in Santa Barbara.
Oh.
And I stayed like 15 years in the Los Angeles area, South Bay, Los Angeles, but then it's been 10 years we're here, my husband and I, in Santa Barbara, and I do coaching, speaking, keynote speaking, online and in person.
Okay, well, that's good to know. Thank you very much. All right, we're moving on to number 5. All right, and that will be Sharon Elwell from the Do Tell Story Swap. And her story, I'm very curious. It's called One Potato. Okay. She says it appealed to her because it's a unique perspective on history that involves each of us. And Sharon was inspired by attending the Mariposa storytelling event every year. So now she's jumping into it and sharing with all of us in California her stories. And you're from Santa Rosa, is that right?
Well, I belong to the Santa Rosa group, yes.
Okay. All right. Thanks. Go ahead, Sharon.
Well, this is a little more modern. We're coming up several thousand years from where we've been all night. If you ask people who sometimes eat while they're on the road where they could get a good hamburger, you will often hear arguments. Someone might say, oh, obviously the best is the Whopper or the Big Mac. Oh no, Wendy's is better than either of those, or Arby's. They might go on and on. But if you ask that same group of people, where do you get the best French fries? There's no argument at all because it is almost universally 100% agreed that McDonald's makes the best French fries in the world. And you could reignite that argument by trying to determine why those French fries are so much better. And someone might say, well, it's because they flash freeze them the second they're peeled so they don't lose flavor. Someone else might say, no, I don't think so. I think it's because they parboil them before they fry them. And then someone else would say, it's the oil. They cook them in a special oil. I think it contains beef tallow. And then someone else might say, it's because they fry them twice. Everybody knows they fry them and then they refry them. And so the argument goes on. But the real fact of the matter is, those wonderful French fries are based on this. This is a Burbank russet potato. And this potato has been genetically modified. And it was genetically modified by a young botanist named Luther Burbank in the Midwest in 1873. And the reason he wanted to modify that potato was because he knew about the Great Potato Famine in Ireland from 1846 to, oh, see, we're back in that century after all. From 1846 to 1852, every year the crops failed because of late blight in Ireland, causing famine, forced migration, and the economy was in tatters. Well, young Burbank had been studying the work of Gregor Mendel, the monk who studied peas and learned how to graft and crossbreed them for achieving a desired result. And he thought he could produce a potato that would be more resistant to blight. And he did. He did. Now, is what happens with most innovation, it's not the person who comes up with the great idea who is a commercial success. It's the person coming along behind who sees the commercial possibilities. And so young Burbank was persuaded to sell his seeds and his plan for the creation of this potato to a man who eventually went on to become the Burpee Seed Company. You've probably been aware of them over the years. So Burbank the potato and Burbank the botanist went their separate ways. And the potato went on, as we know, to McDonald's glory. And the botanist took the $50 that he got for selling it and moved to California. He landed in Santa Rosa, which he declared was the most wonderful place for growing things on the face of the earth. And he had a long growing season and he could do his experiments over and over. And during the 50 some years of his career, he created hundreds, literally hundreds of new varieties. Some of them are things we're very familiar with, the Shasta daisy, Santa Rosa plums, plum cots, and more than 200 kinds of roses. If you visit Santa Rosa and you drive up Santa Rosa Avenue to Sonoma Street, right there on the corner, you will find that Burbank's house is still there with the grounds, and many of the plants that he developed are growing there. And you can wander through and learn about them. You can purchase seedlings and do your own plant experiments. So he had a wonderful time, but there was a problem, and that was that the patent office did not recognize new varieties of plants as an invention, and so they were not protected by patent. In 1930, the patent office reversed its decision about that, but Burbank was long dead, and so his wife was able to apply for patents for some of the things that he developed. So that's what, oh, wait, oh, look at this. There's late breaking news on this front. It turns out that Simplot Farms, based in Boise, Idaho, who supply millions, can you imagine how many potatoes McDonald's uses in a day? They supply millions of Burbank russet potatoes to McDonald's, far and away their biggest consumer. But they have received USDA clearance to genetically modify this loved potato by crossbreeding hybridization with a potato from Argentina that has shown itself to be even more resistant to blight. But the problem, it says here, is that McDonald's won't accept that potato. They do not want, and they don't think their customers want, a genetically modified potato. So here's where you are going to take part in history, because Simplot believes that they can make up the difference in losing the McDonald's contract by selling to the rest of us in the grocery store, because we don't care whether our potatoes are genetically modified or not. So history of potato, just like the history of people, is still going on. Stay tuned.
Oh my God, I am so hungry. I really need a French fry. Oh God, I should have had dinner before this show. Well, thank you, Sharon. How fun. That's kind of nice. It's not tragic history. Um, it's a lighthearted history that, now we can take that information and go out and have dinner with friends and share all the stuff that I know about the potatoes that McDonald's uses. And so that's great. I appreciate it. But I'll eat after David comes on. Our next and our last and our final teller is David Schmidt, who probably doesn't know this, but he's one of my favorite storytellers. He likes scary stories, which I like too. And he writes stories and he writes books. And I've asked him to put his information or share it verbally in the chat about your books and where we can get them, because I'm so excited to, if I can get them at Amazon, let me know. but um, But David, let me see. Oh, I don't have any other bio information other than the name of the story is The Pirates of the Coronados. Is that right?
That's right.
All right, go ahead. We've got you, and thank you for being here.
So this is 1852. Tom, he was a cabin boy on a merchant ship. It was sailing down from San Francisco down to San Diego on its way to the port of San Diego. And on its way there, it hit a terrible storm. You know, Tom, he was just 12 years old. He was in his tiny chamber on the ship, lying in his hammock. He was reading a book about pirates in a bygone era. He was trying to read it anyway. The storm was rocking the ship and rocking his hammock. He was just getting terribly seasick. Never a good idea to read when you're seasick. So he was trying to read that pirate novel. He loved these novels about the golden age of pirates and the Caribbean and peg legs and green parrots on your shoulder and all that. But he couldn't read, so he just tried to shut his eyes and just wait for that terrible storm to break and wait for the ship to reach San Diego. Well, it broke at dawn. All the members of the crew on that merchant ship, the Chelsea, it was called, they all came out on the deck and they said, "Oh, thank the Lord, it's land at last." Thought that storm would never end. The captain came up on board too. Everyone said, "Land, we made it. We're at San Diego. We're at the port of San Diego at last." And the captain was the one who pulled out his maps and he checked things and he said, "No, this can't be." They said, "Well, sure, no, look at it. It is San Diego. See, there's Coronado Island out in front." The captain said, "Well, yes, that's an island, but where's all the land behind it? San Diego should be behind it. It's a small town, but there should be a long strip of land. See, that's just an island in the middle of the ocean still. And see, there's another island and another one. There's 4 of them." The captain, he pulled out his map again. He looked at it, he said, and then when the captain realized where they were, his face went pale white. He said, "Gentlemen, we've overshot it. We overshot San Diego. We're in the Coronados, the 4 Coronado Islands, Las Islas Coronado." And all the other men went pale too. And Tom just watched all of them, trying to figure out what they were so afraid of. Tom, he kind of leaned over the edge and he looked, he noticed swarms of sharks in the water, but they'd seen sharks before, not really in San Diego, but they'd seen sharks, but that's not what the men were afraid of. And the men start whispering and they're saying this name over and over again. Arbaez, Arbaez, El Capitán José Arbaez, Arbaez. And then Tom realized what they're afraid of because he'd heard that name too. Jose Arbaez was the most feared pirate in the Pacific, and he had his base in the Coronado Islands. Now, of course, all of this used to be one unified country. It was Mexico just 4 years ago, but now where they drew that line, now that line's just above the Coronado Islands, these 4 islands off the coast of Baja California. And Narvaez, this pirate, he was known to have his base in those islands somewhere. Now, some folks said that he had worked with Jean Lafitte out in New Orleans. Other people said that he had been in Mexico's Navy and then deserted. Nobody was sure where Arbaez came from. They just knew that he was bloodthirsty. So the captain started shouting orders. He said, "All right, we need to turn this around right away. We need to make for San Diego Harbor. That'll be safe harbor. We need to turn around as soon as we can." And that was as far as he got. An explosion of blood came out of the captain's head, and the captain fell to the deck of the ship, dead. Gunshot. And they looked, and Tom looked, and he saw this schooner ship coming up alongside of them. It was Captain Narvaez. Now, these pirates, they didn't look like in the books that Tom liked to read. They didn't have eye patches and wooden legs and parrots. They just looked like modern, hard men, the kind of men you don't want to meet anywhere, especially out at sea. These men, they pulled up alongside the ship and they did a boarding party. They all came aboard. The last man aboard was taller than the rest. This tall man with a growth of thick black beard walked with an air of authority. That must be Captain Arbaez. He made all of the crew line up along the railing of the ship. And again, Tom kind of thinking in terms of those books, he thought maybe he's going to make us walk the plank. These aren't pirates from books and fantasy. Arbaez just walked up to the first man and grabbed him and threw him overboard. into that swarm of sharks below. He did the same with the next men and the next. Some of the men, they jumped for themselves. Tom could already hear the screams coming from the water from the men as they met those sharks. Advias was running out of men. Pretty soon he was going to get to Tom. Tommy had to think fast. He just kind of thought for a second. He thought, God, I hope this works. And when Advias was standing in front of Tom, he went down on one knee and he said, Capitan Advias, my liege, I am at your service, sir. Advias said, what are you doing, boy? Tom said, I have wanted to be a pirate my whole life. I've heard about your exploits. I've heard about your glory. Please let me serve your ship. Advias laughed, and the other pirates, they laughed too. Not a laugh like a pirate in a novel, not some kind of corny, har, but real cruel laughter of real modern bloodthirsty men in 1852. Advias said, what good would you do? What need do I have of a little boy? What are you, 10, 12? Tom said, well, I think I can be of service, sir. You see, I know I've been on these ships for a while, and I know when the ships are leaving next from San Francisco to come to San Diego. I can tell you when the next ship will be leaving and what it will be carrying. And then Advias's eyes lit up because, of course, this was the gold rush up north. They were finding gold up at Sutter's Mill and all around San Francisco. And Tom knew when those ships were going to be coming. Advias stuck out a big, beefy hand and he said, welcome aboard. So Tom became a member of that pirate crew. It was a hard life. It was not like in the books. The pirates, they almost never sang with accordions. They almost never broke into musical numbers. It was just a hard life of hardtack, and sometimes you got the loot coming in. And Tom, he was just part of that crew. And over time, he would feed Advias that information about, because he did know the schedule of those ships coming down south. He'd feed him that information, but just a little at a time, just enough so that he could still be useful to the crew. But after a while, he was tired of it. Of course, he was traumatized by seeing all the men die in front of him. And he just wanted to get away at last. He wanted to escape. And he started thinking about, how do I get away? But first, he tried to just make the pirates upset. He started demanding more and more of the loot. He acted entitled and spoiled. He said, I should get more of it. I'm giving you all this intelligence here. He thought maybe that would make the pirates so sick of him that maybe they'd just drop him off in some town or city. But that wasn't quite how it worked out. Advias sailed back to the cave, which is still known as Smuggler's Cave, on the largest of the 4 Coronado Islands on the southernmost island. Smuggler's Cave is named that because of Advias. Advias went to drop off some of the loot from the latest ship that they had just robbed. And when they stopped at the island, he poked Tom in the back with the point of his sword. He did have a sword. He poked him in the back and said, you're going ashore too. I'm going to have 2 men guard you. You need to think about your attitude and your place in this organization. So you'll be here until we come back next, in a fortnight. He left them some food and left them a jug of ale and left them on that island at that cave and just left him there. Well, Tom, he was starting to feel really low, but he thought, I still need to come up with some kind of a strategy. I need a plan. And he came up with one. When he was in that cave on that island with just 2 of Advias's men, he got along pretty well with these men, but they were his captors. So one day, Tom was sitting there in the cave. The men, they had stopped tying him up even. He was sitting there, and then he jumped up and looked at the horizon. He said, look, it's Advias. He's coming back already. The men stood up too, and so they set their guns down to go look. And one of them pulled out a spyglass. He leaned his gun against a rock. He said, I don't see any ship on the horizon. He's not even due back for another fortnight. While he was doing that, Tom grabbed his rifle and hit him in the back of the head with it, knocked him out, and he shot the other men. Then he shot this man, and now he was free. So he took their rowboat and he rowed that rowboat, exhausting all-day journey up to San Diego Harbor. And he showed up at San Diego just sunburned and exhausted. But then once he finally got some food and a little ale in him, he was 12, but he drank ale. He is a pirate. And the men finally asked him what happened, and he explained everything. He told them this story, captive by pirates. They didn't believe him until he showed them the chest he had brought on the rowboat with him, a chest of gold from that cave on the South Coronado Island. So he talked the men of San Diego into joining a party to capture Captain Arvaez. They all went down. They hid their ship at the far side of the island. They waited at the cave, and two of the men put on the dead pirate's clothing so Arvaez would see them from a distance. Arvaez finally came back with his ship and saw those two men, look like his men, standing next to Tom, looking all forlorn. And he came ashore and walked up to Tom. He said, "Well, have you thought about your actions, Tom? Have you thought about respecting the man who has the most guns?" Tom said, "Yes, I've learned my lesson about respecting who has the most guns. Yes, I have, Captain." And at that, 20 other men came jumping out from the rocks, and they all pointed their guns at Arvaez. They took him captive. And that was the story of the youngest pirate in the history of the Californias. And if you want to know more about that history, you can read that and 23 other stories in my newest book, Coronado Legends, Specters and Strange Tales from the Crown City. I'll put the link in below.
Thank you. Thank you. You do not disappoint, David.
Oh, the book's not on Amazon yet, but it should be tonight or tomorrow, by the way. But I put an Amazon link.
Okay, because I'm very interested in finding out where I can get some of David's books. Amazon sounds like it's good. And does anybody else have some gigs that you would like to share or announce or put in the chat for everybody? Yes? Anybody? Sarah? Sarah?
Well, guess what? I'm going to talk about the Bay Area Storytelling Festival, which is a week from this coming Sunday. You can get tickets and more information in the link I just put in. And all my friends, if you have some time to do a little volunteering, particularly at the early part around registration, we could really use your help. So let me know. Hope to see you all there in Orinda at the festival a week from Sunday. Thank you.
Anybody else with some gigs coming up, shows coming up that we could join, or you can post in the chat for everybody? Rupa? Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I'm going to be a guest teller at the Sierra Storytelling Festival the last weekend in June. I know it's a while away, but they have opened up registration, and it'll be a lot of fun, I believe. So do consider coming there to it's near Nevada City. I'll try to put a link.
Yeah, put a link in the chat here. Then I'm getting some of this stuff. Okay, anybody else? Any other questions or discussion?
Claire, we'll just go one by one to all the tellers and they can share one of their events and rest they can put in the chat.
Yes, I think we've gone around. Does anybody else have anything to share verbally, or just put it in the chat?
Yeah,
okay. Well,
I'll put a link to my website. I'll put a link to my website in the chat.
Oh, good, good. And John, anything for you?
I have a question for John. How did you know how to pronounce Kearney correctly? Because everybody says Kearney, but the way you said it is the old correct pronunciation.
I think Fort Kearney in Nebraska, and the Nebraskans call it Fort Kearney.
Oh, so they say it right then. Because here of course, Kearney came through here, San Diego, and we have we call it Kearney Mesa. Everyone pronounces it Kearney, but it's named after him too, but we say it wrong.
So yeah, I think I got it from Nebraska.
We have a street in San Francisco called Kearney, so maybe that's the same dude.
Oh, it must be. Yeah, he was a big part of the U.S. troops that invaded California.
Cool. All right. Anybody else have a gig that you want to promote? Event? Okay. Well, let's make sure